So guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Matt B. I review running shoes here on YouTube, except when I don't. And when I don't, I talk about running. Today is one of those days. We're going to talk about embracing the suck, or entering the pain cave. And it's become very cliche, but you can do hard things. And we often do hard things. Now, if you remember a couple weeks ago, we talked about when does running get easier? And I suppose, yes, it does get easier sometimes, definitely not all the time. Today, we're talking about those times that it is definitely not easy. And I think this is going to be a good one because I'm sure we've all experienced a difficult time when running, when our legs are burning, when our heart rate spikes. You know the feeling. So let's get into it. So, embracing the suck. How did I come up with this? Well, I found an article in Canadian Running magazine. Canadian Running is a great source of running information, and I often find a lot of stuff in there to talk to you guys about. But this article specifically is called How to Get Better at Embracing the Suck. And if there's anything that us runners like, it's learning how to not suffer as much. So we're going to be talking about how you can actually suffer less. But I'll tell you right here, I promise you are going to be disappointed. Okay, so first of all, let's just distinguish between embracing the suck. What we call pain is not actually pain. It's more exertional discomfort. Right, when we're pushing hard, when that heart rate is going through the roof, we're not actually causing tissue damage. Well, I suppose we are because our muscle fibers are breaking down. But if we do it right, we're not going to cause long-lasting damage. So that exertional discomfort is different from actually a physical injury, right? I think we can all grasp that concept. So with that in mind, we shouldn't really have anything to be scared of. What we are doing intentionally, and the discomfort we're feeling is due to the intensity of the exercise. We are not going to die, and yet it sometimes feels that way. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to tell you how to actually get better at embracing the suck. And the article cites a two-prong attack. And the first prong of this two-prong attack is very disappointing, and that's to practice it more. I mean, come on, this is very disappointing. You thought you were going to get like a get-out-of-jail-free card, like a magic pill, so running hard doesn't hurt as much. No, if you do it more, it may get easier. And get this, research suggests that we can actually change our brain to how we perceive pain and discomfort. So when you go out for that first set of 400s and you're totally gassed and your body's on fire, if you keep doing it on a regular basis, it's not going to feel like your body is actually on fire. It might just feel like a slow smoldering. But ultimately, we do have to practice it. Now, you don't have to go out and do it all the time. Doing that level of activity all the time is a recipe for disaster. And by disaster, I mean injury. And then we actually will get tissue damage or bone damage, and we won't be just experience that exertional discomfort. It will be real discomfort that continues after the exertion is over. So take it easy. But you should be pushing yourself to at least some level of discomfort at least once a week. At least that's what the article says. I would highly recommend that you talk to your coach and see what they recommend, or at least Googling it. But the thing about practicing suffering is that it's not always doing the same thing. You don't always have to go out and knock out those very fast 400s or worse 200s. I guess what I mean is that it's not always anaerobic discomfort that we're talking about. Suffering is suffering, and you can experience it in lots of different ways. Isn't that great? So you know that fatigue you get after you've come into the end of a really hard training block, or when you go out for a race and you are just thrashing it and you're giving it all the way to the end. That is also suffering. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But the article also suggests that riding out the disappointment when you don't crush your goals, or you don't meet your speeds or intervals or whatever goal that you set for yourself that day, when you are disappointed, that is also a form of suffering. And get this, so is heading out the door when you're not feeling motivated. When you don't want to go for that run and you still get up and you put on your shoes and you head out the door and go for the run, that is a form of suffering, and that is making you better at suffering, which is really good to know because most of the time I don't feel like going out the door. I actually put my shoes on and go out for a run most days long before I ever feel like it. In fact, I don't often find that I feel like going for a run until there is no possible way that I can go for a run. Okay, moving right along to prong 2 of our two-prong attack, and that is to learn coping strategies, which again I find remarkably disappointing. So in order to deal with discomfort, with pain, with suffering, we have to experience this suffering, and then we have to learn how to deal with it. So I suppose basically you embrace the suck by sucking it up. But in all seriousness, let's talk about a few coping strategies that are mentioned in the article. And the authors that are quoted in the article suggest a method called feed forward. And in a nutshell, feed forward is a mental strategy where you think about the pain that you're going to experience before it actually happens. So as of the filming of this video, I know that I have 400 intervals coming up in a couple of days, and I know that they are really going to hurt. So let me just take a minute to just think about that pain. Oh, no, I don't want to think about it. So clearly I have to deal with my coping strategies and learn to do that a little more. But that's ultimately what feed forward is. And cognitive neuroscientists have actually found support that doing a feed forward actually works. Like thinking about pain or discomfort or suffering or any kind of adversity before it actually happens actually helps us plan for all possible outcomes. And I'm pretty sure that you've already heard of something very similar to this, and that is when we do a fast forward and we're actually thinking about the race. So if we've entered in a race, we have to mentally prepare ourselves for how our body is going to be feeling at certain stages of the race, with the same goal in mind, that we are preparing ourselves for every possible outcome. So when we get to mile 20 of the marathon, we know it's going to be difficult, but we know we're going to be able to push through. And we especially know this because we've already thought about it ahead of time. The same thing goes with a feed forward. We're thinking about the discomfort, so when we get to it, we know what to expect, and it's not such a surprise. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, because I was thinking the same thing, Matt, 400s, I know that they are a very uncomfortable distance to run. I know I don't like doing them because I know that my body's going to hurt. But you need to go a little deeper than that. You actually have to do the mental work before you do the physical work. And you're just going to have to trust in past science and past research to know that this actually works. Okay, the next coping strategy is segmentation. And very simply, segmentation is when we break our run up into manageable chunks. So let's say, and I keep using 400s because again, I've got them coming up in a couple of days, but let's say you've got 12 400s. Well, that is very easily broken up into 12 segments. So when I go out for those 12 400s, I am going to think about each 400 as an individual segment of time. And when that one segment is done, my brain likes to let it go. I get to recover, my heart rate gets to come down, and then just as I'm approaching the second interval, I can start thinking about that, knowing that I have a very short amount of time to complete that 400 before I get another break. Then I can let that go. I don't want to think about all 12 as a block, because when I'm at the first one, that 12th one seems a long way away. So by dealing with each individual one, I am making it just more manageable to think about, and therefore approach and give each one my best. You've probably heard a similar sentiment with run each mile that you're in, and I equate this with marathon training just because it's so long. But again, when you're at mile 20 of the marathon and you still have a 10K to go, you don't have to think about the rest of the race that you have to run. You think about that one little segment that you're in, and then when that mile or kilometer marker ticks over, it's gone. You've got that much more behind you, then you can start focusing on the next mile or the next kilometer. It works. And I've actually lost miles that way. By lost miles, you know what I mean? Like when you're not paying attention to your watch and you think you're coming up on mile 22, but it's actually mile 23. That is a real treat. And if that's ever happened to you, let me know in the comments. Okay, the last coping strategy that I'm going to talk about in this video is thumb tapping. And this is the first time I've actually heard of thumb tapping, but I have actually heard of and talked about this in the past with thumb rubbing. So if you find yourself running and you think you're very tense, if you gently rub your thumb and your forefinger together, that will automatically loosen you up, because it's a lot more difficult to be tense and then rub your fingers together. But thumb tapping is pretty much the same way. So basically you're going to be tapping your thumb on the top of your forefinger just like you're clicking a pen, and you can do that with one or both hands, and you can do it in time with your cadence. And really, it's just trying to take your mind off of the task at hand. It's removing your thought of how uncomfortable you are. So this would work especially well if you are doing repeats, if you're doing hill climbs. That tapping is going to take your mind off the pain, and it's going to put it on the tapping, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. And I've never actually done it, but I am going to try that one. I like the sound of that. So my friends, just remember that even though that when we're running a very hard effort, like intervals, like a tempo run, like hill repeats, like a race, we get better at learning how to deal with this suffering by actually doing more of that suffering. It almost seems counterintuitive, but it's really not. So of course, guys, I want to hear from you. I want to know, what is the most painful, what is the most amount of suffering that you deal with in your running schedule? Is it intervals? Is it a tempo run? Is it racing? It's probably racing, but let's keep it to training, because I think everybody has a hard time in a race. Right, if we're paying for a race, we want to give it our best effort, and our best effort always hurts. And if you have made it to this point in the video, why don't you drop the balloon emoji in the comments just to let me know that you have made it to this point in the video. And the balloon emoji is really because you have to blow up a balloon, so it blows, which is the exact opposite of sucking, but in this case we're going to go with it. And with that, it's Matt B. This has been about embracing the suck. Be kind, be happy, run well. I'll see you in a couple of days.